You know those memories, right? Those weird, unsettling moments from when you were a kid? A noise in the dark, maybe a shadow that you swore moved. We all just tell ourselves, it was just my imagination. But what if it wasn't?
It's a really chilling thought, isn't it? The idea that some of those deep-seated fears aren't based on some fantasy, but on something that, well, actually happened. A moment where the rules of the world just kind of bent, and you were the only one who saw it. So to dig into this, we're going to open up 3 case files. These are 3 personal stories that feel way too detailed, way too specific to just be brushed aside. We're going to look at what happened, and more importantly, why these kinds of memories stick with us for an entire lifetime.
Okay, so our first case. It takes us to a place that's supposed to be the safest in the world, your family home. But for one young boy and his little sister, their new house came with, well, something extra.
The setup is just classic, you know? A 9-year-old kid in a small, old house. The kind of place where your mom just says, "Oh, honey, old houses just make noises." But what happened here went way beyond just creaking floorboards.
It starts small, like these things so often do. A shadow that seems to have a mind of its own, a toy chest that keeps being found open. But the real kicker, the detail that changes everything, is the warning from his 5-year-old sister. She just casually mentions the man in the closet, and it's so terrifying because she says it so matter-of-factly.
And this is where the fear goes from just a feeling to actual physical evidence. Hearing something dragging across the floor is scary enough, but then finding fresh, deep scratches in the wood the next morning, that makes it real. And still, his mother finds a rational explanation, blaming him for playing with something sharp.
This really shows you the divide, doesn't it? While the adults are busy looking for logical answers, the little sister's terror is just absolute. She isn't questioning what she's seeing. For her, it's 100% real. That simple, terrified cry, "He's there," becomes the absolute heart of this whole thing. And of course, it all builds to this one terrifying night. I mean, this sequence is pure nightmare fuel. Each step just isolates him more and more. First, the door creaks open by itself. Then, the hallway light clicks off. You hear footsteps, and they stop right outside his door. And then, the final violation, a tall, dark shape just leans in, peering into his room. All right, on to our second case. And you're going to see a similar setup here. A family moves into a new house, excited for a fresh start. But just like before, they pretty quickly figure out they're not the only ones there. So now our narrator is 10 years old, and they're in a bigger, newer house. You'd think that would feel safer, right? More modern, less spooky. But the fear that finds him in this house is just as ancient and just as unsettling.
And notice the progression here. It starts with a sound, some soft shuffling from the closet, something you could easily dismiss. Then it moves to the window, tapping that isn't just tree branches. And finally, it becomes visual, undeniable. A pale hand, just there.
Just picture that for a second. That single image is so incredibly powerful. A hand pressed against the glass is such an invasive thing. It's somebody trying to see in, or maybe trying to get in. But it's the next detail that makes this whole thing truly impossible.
And there it is. That's the detail that changes everything. A hand can't just show up on a second-story window unless someone's on a ladder. This one tiny fact takes the story from a creepy prank to something genuinely paranormal. There's just no logical way to explain it. And hey, just like in our first case, we get confirmation from a younger sibling. The 4-year-old brother actually gives this thing a name, the White Lady, and adds a terrifying feature. Her eyes were all black. He's seeing the exact same thing, which just validates his older brother's fear. So the final event is just a complete invasion of his space. A window that was locked unlatches and opens all by itself during a storm, and the entity doesn't climb in, it floats. It defies gravity. I mean, that is the ultimate violation of a kid's safe space, a physical and supernatural break-in. Okay, for our final case, the terror moves outside the house. This isn't about a haunting inside the walls, it's about a haunted street. The threat isn't some monster in the closet, it's a friendly face that's hiding an impossible, horrifying secret. At first, this sounds completely normal, almost idyllic. You've got an 8-year-old kid on his bike and a friendly old man who waves to him from his driveway every day. It becomes this comforting routine. They even have short conversations, just yelling across the street to each other. And then the entire foundation of his reality just shatters with this one sentence. He finally goes across the street to ask about the man, and the man's wife hits him with this bombshell. Every single wave, every chat, every little moment he shared was with someone who was already gone.
Now you'd think maybe he just got the person wrong. But a photo proves otherwise. The real husband had this really distinct, pale scar that ran from his ear all the way to his mouth. The man he'd been talking to for weeks, he had a smooth, plain face. They were not the same person. And even after the truth comes out, this thing doesn't just vanish. It tries to make contact one last time, calling his name in that same familiar voice. The friendly neighbor had become a disembodied voice in the night. What a truly haunting transformation. So we've gone through 3 pretty different stories, right? But they share some deeply disturbing connections. Let's take a step back and actually break down the common threads that make these childhood hauntings so powerful and so lasting. This right here is the central conflict in all of these stories. The child is experiencing something that feels terrifyingly real, but the adult world just keeps giving them rationalizations. It's your imagination. You had a bad dream. It was just the wind. This dismissal, it doesn't make the fear go away. It just makes the kid feel totally alone. And psychologically, that isolation is what cements the memory. It becomes this secret truth that only they know, which makes it even more powerful.
So when you boil it all down, these aren't just random scary stories. They follow a very clear pattern. First, a safe space is violated. Then, a younger sibling who doesn't know any better confirms what's happening. The adults refuse to believe it, and that exact combination is what creates this deep psychological scar. The memory isn't just about the ghost or the shadow. It's about the moment your understanding of reality was totally shattered and nobody was there to back you up. And that is why these memories don't fade. They become a part of who you are.
And that leaves us with one final thought. When you look back on those unexplainable moments from your own childhood, what are you really looking at? Are they just tricks of the mind? Stories we've accidentally made bigger over the years? Or are they echoes of something real? Warnings from a world we couldn't possibly understand that the adults in our lives told us not to see?